Hello, everyone, and welcome to this project showcase at India Foundation for the Arts. As many of you know, India Foundation for the Arts is an independent national philanthropy that supports and implements projects across research, practice, and education in the arts in India. Over the last 29 years, we have supported over 850 projects leading to a variety of outcomes such as publications, performances, photographs, exhibitions, archival material, and much more. Project Showcase is a series of events that we host to share the work of the many projects that IFA has journeyed with in the past years, and to hold space for conversations, discussions, and explorations on the variety of arts and cultural projects that surround us. Today is a very special presentation, a conversation, as Miriam shares from her particular exploration on a movement that brought together and is continuing to bring together solidarities. Before I hand over to my colleague to tell you a little bit more about today's event, the project that we're showcasing, a few house rules. This event is happening here on Zoom, but it is also streaming live on Facebook. Feel free to leave your comments and reflections in the chat box here and on Facebook. We endeavor to create a safe space, so requesting you to keep all conversations respectful. At the end of the presentation with Miriam and the panelists, we will be facilitating a Q&A. So if you'd like to leave questions for the panelists, please use the Q&A box. And if you're on Facebook, leave it in the comment section and my colleague will bring it here to Zoom. I'd like to introduce now Harshita Batwal, Program Officer for Arts Research and Project 560, to introduce the project, to introduce Miriam, and to share a little bit about this evening's showcase. Harshita, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to a very special project showcase, Reframing Gender, Women in Cinema Collective, with Miriam, along with the members of the WCC. In this session, Miriam will share from her interactions with the WCC, which was part of a project that was implemented under the Arts Research Program at IFA. To quickly tell you a little bit about the program, under the Arts Research Program, we support and implement projects that engage scholars, researchers, as well as practitioners to research various histories and expressions of artistic practices in India. Without much ado, I will now invite Miriam to take the conversation forward. Over to you, Miriam.
Hello, welcome everyone to the IFA project showcase on Reframing Gender, the Women in Cinema Collective. We had postponed this event in July because of the Wayanad floods. But since then to now, this women's collective has been in the headlines. It is because of their insistence that the HEMA committee findings are now in the public domain. Let me introduce myself. I'm Miriam, a documentarian and a filmmaker. I hail from Kerala and I work in Mumbai. When the formation of the WCC, or the Women in Cinema Collective, happened in my home state, I could feel the ramifications of it from a distance here in Mumbai, the heart of the mainstream Hindi film industry. India is, after all, the biggest film producing nation in the world, and it is no secret that the cinema industry has been male dominated, infamous for nepotism, casting couch culture, and narratives defined by the male gaze. This has become even more evident with the findings of the HEMA committee report. So even in 2017, when WCC was formed, I sensed its significance because of the place cinema holds in every Indian's life. Storytelling is a potent medium of change, and the way stories are told and who gets to tell the story, therefore, becomes vitally important. My research on the Women in Cinema Collective was supported in 2020 by the India Foundation for the Arts. It was the time of the pandemic, and that set the tone when productions ground to a halt. There was reluctance to have any extra person on sets, and that would have seemed like a disadvantage. But on the other hand, I realized there were advantages. I was able to get more than 15 interviews from very well-known personalities and speak with them at leisure because they did have time on their hands. The four main areas I looked at that time was their journey into cinema that paved the way for WCC. Secondly, the actress assault case and initiatives to make cinema a more egalitarian work environment, as well as the ripple effect. In today's presentation, I will share images from archives and personal collections, quotes from interviews, as well as questions to our very special panelists here today to showcase reframing gender in cinema. So first, let me introduce you to the women of WCC. A few founding members are here with us today. Our first panelist grew up in Delhi, got involved in theatre movements of Badal Sarkar, protested the emergency of Indira Gandhi, and went on to film school in Pune to become a well-known film editor. What is even more fascinating about Beena Paul is the position she held for a few decades as one of the most respected curators, artistic director of the International Film Festival of Kerala, IFFK, before she moved on to many newer festivals. These are slides from some of her early works. And when the mainstream film industry at that time was so male-dominated, it translates at the ground level. Working as an editor, Beena found that even the biggest studios where she began her career had no toilets for ladies, making it an isolated and hostile workspace for women. The much-awaited and recently released Hema Committee report reveals not much has changed. Women still remain devoid of basic human rights such as toilets, privacy, dignity in a heavily male-dominated space. So my question to you, Beena, is after studying in the Film Institute and coming from that space, it must have been a really rude shock to adjust to the film industry at that time, even in a progressive state like Kerala, which is like famed for its 100% literacy. And at that time, you were in fact working with some of the most leading lights, the most progressive directors at that time. So from then to when, you started curating and the first audiences that showed up at IFFK, that really kind of, again, brought about very clearly this kind of skewed ratio. Can you take us through that journey?
Yeah, hi, Miriam. Thank you so much for doing this work. As you know, we are not very good at documenting anything we do, so it's good to see all this being documented. And thank you, IFA. Of course, I have a very special connection with IFA. So thank you all for having us. And just a disclaimer, that photograph was taken many years ago. I probably don't look anything like that now. Yeah, I had grown up in Delhi. I had gone to the film school. I was very used to working in a very, almost a libertine kind of space. The Film Institute offered us a lot of freedom to grow, to think, to know gender. We do look back at it now and say it was a gendered space, but while we were there, I must say there was not, this was not the issue we were dealing with. We were trying to find our voice as filmmakers. We were struggling with. I came to Kerala in many years ago, and I was so excited. I had seen so many films from Kerala. I mean, one of the reasons I even thought of film as a career was these films of Arvindan, etc., that I had seen. And I was really excited about coming as a young person to work in this film industry. I must say, I was utterly astonished. This studio was beautiful, huh? Nowhere in Delhi, nowhere in Bombay, nowhere would you have found a space like this. The green, the space of, the pace of work, everything was so wonderful. But what was shocking and really flummoxed me was that there were no women. And I've always said this. I remember sitting at the editing table and thinking, can I go for lunch? There'll be nobody there. Of course, I had the great disadvantage of not having language. I mean, I didn't know Malayalam very well then. So you also put it down to all that. Oh, I'm so nervous because I don't know Malayalam. But it was also this business of just no presence, and that's why I think in WCC we're so keen to say that women need to enter this field, because it is presence that makes the first change actually. The lack of presence is a big issue. Um, anyway, as you said, I worked with very good directors. It's always a uphill task to deal with assistant directors who don't trust you, don't believe you, all that. But I think I had the confidence because of my background. I was able to sort of get on with it. Though I must say, I often spoke to friends from the Film Institute and said, what is this that's happening? Moving on to the IFFK, I have to say that turned out to be another experience like this. I mean, there are meetings and meetings and meetings where you're the only woman in a room. It's so sort of, the only word is male dominated. And then I go into theaters at that time and we notice that it's full of men. In fact, I don't know if you all know the well-known filmmaker Globa Rocha. I was introducing a film and his son was with me and we were standing in the front of the theater and introducing the film. And he whispered to me, he said, are there no women in this state? Literally, he asked me this question. And that was how it was. And it was really, I think, this effort at building audiences, at showing different kind of films that became a kind of very important task for me, I thought. So yeah, so that's been the journey. Not much has changed. Policy making levels, very few women, meetings, lots of mansplaining all the time, lot of gaslighting. So this, of course, continues. Not very different because I'm gray, and I mean, I think there's a little bit of one does grow a little in stature, but still one does sense this discomfort about having a woman around.
So what it took so long for the WCC to actually take shape, given this scenario? How come that women didn't find a need to kind of come together in a sort of organizational framework to sort of lobby for their voices? And also now that you all have, what are the key demands that WCC is making today?
There are two things. One is because of the lack of presence of women, we were not very connected to each other. I mean, we all knew each other a little bit personally. I knew Anjali, I knew Revati. Revati and I had worked together. We all sort of knew each other, but only as friends. I think really the 2017 incident of the abduction brought us very close together. Just through a WhatsApp group, we started chatting to each other. And we started talking about attitude. Basically, it started with uh, conversations about attitude because we realized how the whole industry was reacting to this. It was quite shocking, actually. For us, there was no question to be asked in terms of the fact that we had to support her. We were very proud of her, etc. But for the men, for the rest of the industry, it was these women who are just making a hoo-ha about nothing, etc. So yeah, so I think that was the start of the conversation. And then we realized that there's much that we all have that is in common. And there is much that we need to do to pave the way for the next lot of women who do come and make sure that there are more women in the industry. I think our key demands are really, apart from all these systemic changes like unions, etc. One is certainly dignity of labor. each of us at every point has been, demoralized, disrespected, not valued for what we bring to the table as professionals. I think that would be our first kind of need in this, and it's very surprising in this day and age that how would you mock at a woman camera person, or how do you treat a woman director, like she doesn't know anything. And I think all of us have had these experiences. So that, dignity and professionalism at the workspace for all basically. And yeah, of course, systemic changes, zero tolerance to sexual harassment, implementation of the POSH Act. I mean, these are some of the areas that we're working on, but attitude and safety, security, and numbers. This is what I would say. Sorry?
What about pay parity and
pay parity and all are labor issues that have to be looked at. Of course we are. And some things have changed over the last 5 years, but those are not very, of course we are interested in working on all that, but I think pay parity will come with understanding that I bring to the table exactly what a man does.
right? So Beena Fall is just one of the glimpses of women who deserve dedicated chapters for overcoming the odds to claim their space in cinema history, or more appropriately, I should say, her story. And that brings me to my next panelist, who is none other than Revati, aka Asha Kelluni. She was spotted as a child prodigy in school in Chennai. Her teenage effervescence and curiosity not only made her take up unconventional roles where she often outshone the heroes, but she would also loiter after film shoots to learn the ropes of filmmaking from the director or from the music composer. Revati is an award-winning, versatile, and multilingual actress who also plunged into directing her own films. Her film Mitra, My Friend, with an all-woman crew, finds itself a mention in the Limca Book of Records. There we actually again have Beena, Revati, and Fauzia coming together as a technical crew. So my question to you, Revati, can we have Revati on the screen?
Hi.
When you started your career in cinema, it was a time that actresses were actually mostly accompanied. You had told me that you also were accompanied when you started out. But over the years, you have really been a voice for younger actresses, emphasizing this need for safety. So can you comment on the significance right now, this moment in time when so many actresses came forward and spoke to the HEMA committee at the time of the actress assault case, and now even once the report is out, this outpouring literally that is happening. Can you take us through that?
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, IFA, for this. The conversation is a very important conversation at this stage. When I came into the industry, as an actress, it was not as lonely as Beena was saying, because there were many women in my part of what I was doing, acting. But over the years, and what happened in 2017 kind of opened our eyes to a different aspect of the film industry. Not that I did not know something like this existed. I mean, I'm not talking about abduction and assault, but issues, did exist in the industry, and I have been witness to a few. But that kind of hit us, and the casual WhatsApp group that was formed during that time as a support group for her turned into something more serious, where we started sharing our experiences with each other, and we realized there were so many more who wanted to share their experiences. And then as a senior member of the industry, I felt it is very important that we kind of take responsibility of the workspace, and we work towards a safe space more than anything else. And just like that, WCC was formed, and you know what happened. But with the release of the HEMA committee report, for us, it was very important, because before this, it was just us talking about issues in the film industry. But this is a black and white record of the issues, which is, it's a government record. And this was very important that we see it. And that is why we were asking for it for about 4.5 years. And once it was released, we were hoping to read it diligently, in detail, understand, and see the recommendations, also see if what is it that we can give to it. But personally, I did not expect so many women to come up and talk about their experiences in the film industry. Women who had not gone and spoken at the HEMA committee, women even otherwise, were talking about it. As recently as yesterday, a person after 27 years, she said that as soon as I came to know about the HEMA committee report, it gave me the courage to face what happened to me 27 years back. And for the first time, she spoke about her experience to her own family member, which, which I felt was extremely emotional for me. And that is how important this report is. People felt that, yes, I am not alone. There are others who have experienced this, and I need to put my experience out there so that this does not happen to the next generations who come into the film industry with the passion of working in cinema.
It's so ironical that the accounts of most of the men, however, interviewed for the HEMA committee report, they kind of dismiss the lived experiences and trauma of most of these, young actresses who found the courage, not just actresses, women across the industry who found the courage to speak, kind of putting it out as these are just tantrums that are being thrown. So I want to move away from that kind of a scenario to actually what, I heard while speaking to the members of your crew in Mitra, my friend, when they, in complete contrast, talk about the camaraderie on the sets and this feeling of safety and sort of flourishing. So can you tell us a little bit about, it was your directorial debut at that time, and you were like, it was a new territory. So what was it like working with this all-women crew?
It was something that happened. I had not really planned it. But, when Priya came up with her story, Priya, who has written the story, and I felt that this is the story I want to direct. And, a couple of others fell into place. I mean, one of the first persons I think spoke to was Beena to edit the film, because I felt I needed somebody who can guide my film, since I was doing the film for the first time. So I needed an experienced hand, to guide the film in the right way. And then it was basically, I went to people like PC Sriram, and I said, look, I can't afford you. I want somebody from your team, somebody who can photograph as well. And Fauzia came in. That was her first film. And I went to Sridhar, who's, he was like the ace audiographer then. And I said, I can't afford you. And he gave me Geeta. And then it was about, hey, I think I should get somebody to do the music. And I was looking out for somebody. And that's when I realized Mr. Ilayaraja's daughter, Bhavatarani, was creating music, and went and met her, heard some of her music. And I felt this is the team. And slowly all of us came together, and, it was amazing. Like, I was telling Fauzi when we were shooting in the US, when I took a shot, I I was myself because I jumped up, felt happy, and hugged my camera woman. So it was a feeling where, oh my God, because like Beena said, even as an actor, there were many sets where I felt lonely because there were no other women in the technical crew, and sometimes I was alone for a few days with just me, and many people. So you are different in that kind of a surrounding, but this was beautiful, and I'm so happy I did it. I was able to do it, I should say.
So Mitra won many national awards. That was like, I think, the icing on the cake. And I would love to have Beena's input here as the editor. So Beena, at that time, you won the award for best editing, the National Film Award, but also the fact that who would believe that you were transitioning from, analog to digital at that time, which is like a huge technical transition. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I just want to add one thing. Beena did get upset and angry with me. Hey, how can you not take the shot? Why didn't you not do this? But it was such an amazing learning experience with Beena. The way she put things together and, created the film, even though I did make mistakes as a director.
Thanks, Revati. What I remember is that we only got night shifts.
Oh, yes.
It was all night shifts
All
we were
night shifts.
editing. And yeah, I was dealing with this digital thing. So Revati would say, press this button. No, press this button. Maybe it's a cut. Maybe it's a joint. Yeah, so it was, I cannot tell you how I had worked with another person earlier. I had worked with Shabnam on a short film, and I had sort of gone through this feeling of being, but when I worked on Mitra and this amazing energy we had, I stayed at Revati's house all night. We did it. We'd come home, we'd hang out, there was such a sense of, and also the conversations about the film, about the characters, those guys. So, there was something. For the first time, honestly, I sort of saw, after working with John Abraham and Arvindan and P.N. Menon, all these, M.T. Vasudevan nights, suddenly there was this release of saying, yeah, it can be such fun. We can work together, we can laugh together, we can make mistakes together. Yeah, I think it was, for me, a very, very important moment in my sort of growth, in understanding myself as an editor and how, not to feel always overpowered by this kind of atmosphere you are in. So it was really wonderful. I just remember those nights and nights. And Ashwin was my assistant was the only guy around, and he used to wonder what we were laughing about. And you know how women have this ability to sort of
say something really simple and
laugh.
Laugh.
Yes.
Yes.
It was very, very lovely. And I always feel grateful that Revati sort of enabled this, because it was a very important point in my journey as a profession.
It kind of carried it forward as well with her other productions. You had shared images of your latest ones also, where you lean to having quite a strong female technical crew.
Absolutely, because I feel that women have an ability in them where they're very meticulous and very detailed work. So I don't know, I really enjoy, and I like having women in my set because I like that energy, the female energy that is there. And not that I'm intimidated by the male energy, because both my films after that, Phir Milenge and Salamenki, had Ravi Varman as my cinematographer. But even it was great fun with everybody in it. So yeah, I tend to work towards getting more women in my set.
Okay, thank you. And we move on to our next panelist, who is Anjali Menon. She grew up in the Gulf and returned to India after studying in London. She turned the perspective of being an outsider in Kerala to box office gold. Her commercial success also popularized her brand of subtle, feel-good cinema with very refreshing women's roles. So my question to you, Anjali, you have donned so many roles, from screenplay writer on Ustad Hotel to director, producer, and you've in a sense smashed all stereotypes about success, eluding women at the box office. That's itself like so refreshing. And it's been a long journey from Ustad Hotel to Manjadi Kuru, Kerala Cafe, Bangalore Days, Wonder Women. But I want to take you back and ask you, what did it feel like to actually break into the industry with a prevalent boys' club culture?
I would like to start by thanking you, Miriam, for taking the trouble to document all of this, and IFA for supporting the whole venture. Actually, just now, sitting here while you were speaking with Bina and Revati, I was just, thrown back to those years. We speak to each other every day now, one another because of the collective. And sometimes I forget that these are people who are iconic, who I have looked up to so much. And I continue to look up to them, not just as, for people for what they've achieved in their careers, but also as individuals, as women, who stand up for others. Starting when I actually started up, sort of the very first bit was to find, a couple of people who would believe in me to start making that film. And I remember reaching out to Revati. We were at, I think, the film festival in Goa, and she was on the jury. And I literally just ran into her and said, "Can I have 1 hour of your time?" And she had no time. I wanted to really quiz her on how she went about making Mitra, because I had no idea, head or tail, of where I should start, what I should do. And she was so generous with her time. She literally said, "Listen, I have no time, but I need to have lunch. So, why don't you just hop in and be with me for lunch?" And we had a lunch session together where I literally asked her everything I needed to ask her. And she was, generous with that time and with the replies, and very honest. And I think that in itself made a big difference, that we had people like them who were precedents, to what we wanted to do. Here was a director I was speaking to who had already made that kind of a beautiful film, and who'd got the national award and had made a lovely film that we could all relate to. It was a world that, we all knew well but hadn't seen on screen. Similarly with Pina, every time my family would ask me, "But is there anyone, in the Malayalam film industry, who's a woman and who's working in this sort of off-screen space?" I would always say, "This is one woman is there. This is one Bina Paul." And, just having them there, even if I didn't know them, made a big difference to the journey. So when I did start off, I'm somehow a little weird that way. I don't have much of a gender switch in my head. And I'm not thinking that, okay, I'm a woman and therefore I should do it this way, and somebody's a man or a woman or anything. And I'm pretty much, it's not something which occurs to me immediately. So I went about doing things like anybody would, It didn't occur to me that I'm sort of a fish out of water here. And I think it affected everyone else more than me. And it took me a long time to realize that I was evoking peculiar reactions, maybe because of my gender, and it after I got into a lot of trouble. In fact, I remember a journalist who's not even a friend. She just held me by my shoulders and shook me one day and said, "Can you not see that this is happening because you're a woman?" And it really took me a few minutes to stand there and join the dots and say that, oh my God, is that what this is about? Because it really took someone else to point it out to me. And then I still went back, and even today, I revisit a lot of those times, and I wonder, I mean, why was I the only one getting into so many issues, so many blockages everywhere? And then it kind of made sense, to that narrative started to make sense. And then the more the experiences came, the more we speak to everybody, the more even new directors breaking in today, when you speak to them, you realize, yeah, this does play a role. So even if we are not thinking about it, we are in a society where, gender is of prime importance for everyone. I still haven't figured out why. When a child is born, the very first thing that is announced is actually the gender of the child. Now, how important is that to a child that's newborn? I don't know. It should actually assume importance only by the time this child hits puberty. Till then, I don't even know what is the importance of that. So that is the place we are in, and this is not just Kerala, this is world over. Maybe in certain more concentration, we have it because of a certain, patriarchal culture that we're all part of. But it's important to understand this, to take cognizance of it, and then to choose how one wants to deal with it.
In fact, especially during the pandemic, Malayalam cinema has become so popular. It's like at a time now, earlier I used to speak to my Malayali group about Malayalam cinema, but today it's a point where you can talk to anyone about Malayalam cinema because they have watched it, And in fact, Payal Kapadia at Cannes had, kind of toasted the fact that she had chosen a large part of her film to be in Malayalam because of the kind of woke audience that is there and the kind of diversity that is being embraced. So my question to you is that, is this a reflection of like changing narratives as well as changing sort of power structures, and everything that we're seeing today was actually happening in small measures, and today we are seeing the full effect of it?
See, I think it's important to, to always remember that in Kerala, as a society, we are very highly exposed to literature, to theatre, to many different art forms, not just from Kerala, but also from outside. Even within Kerala, right from, Kodiyatam onwards, there are so many influences that we have, which are very strong parts of our narrative memory, which are very, they're intrinsic to our understanding of a form, of a syntax, all of that. And when we watch cinema, it does not make much of a difference to us whether it's from Kerala or from Sweden or from Russia, because as long as we're connecting to the medium, it is not a coincidence that one of the best festivals in the country is, the Kerala Film Festival, and Bina here has a huge hand in that. And that audience that we're speaking of is, constantly in the throes of this kind of stimulation and this kind of values coming to them from all parts, from all things that they're experiencing. But even there is a very strong cultural element which is very much rooted within sort of that kind of a patriarchal space. So you may have matrilineal communities and everything, but in practice, we do experience the patriarchy every day. So it's a very interesting confluence of influences, you see, where the audience is living a certain life, but also aspires to a very different set of values. And that is actually when this becomes a fertile environment for thought, a fertile environment for change, which is actually why you have something like the Women in Cinema Collective in Kerala. You have a study like this happening in Kerala. I'm really proud that I'm in a place that is progressive enough where these different voices coexist. We have that potential. It's not that we're places where things are completely, within a certain uneasy peace that things are all right. No, it's not. We may be making a noise and really creating a ruckus, but the fact is that we are able to speak up, and more people are coming out to do that. And out there, please, who are our biggest supporters in this journey? It's the general public. It's the media. You see, it's them who are coming forth and saying, here, we stand beside you. We are in solidarity with you. Today I hear of a group that is formed called the WCC support group. Where does that happen? If it happens anywhere, it happens in Kerala. You see, so that kind of a thing. When we also have many, ventures here, like for example, at the film festival, when you come there, what everybody notices is a certain egalitarian atmosphere. Is where people are so open about the kind of cinema to watch, and it cuts across class and gender and a lot of things. But yes, the presence of women is very less, incredibly less. But over the last, I would say, 10 years, that has also changed a lot. So we are an evolving society. I don't like to think of it as a monolith, not at all. And every day we are changing. And if anything, the society has a huge role for where we stand today as well. People are speaking up. Big credit to the society for having created that space as well. Initially, when we as a collective came here, we were ridiculed. We were mocked by people who are well aware of all of the issues that we are speaking of. We were severely mocked. But even then, people who heard us a little bit were people who had nothing to do with the industry. And more, that listening has given shape to a certain voice which speaks in support of us. And that has snowballed into this. So please understand, this is a social movement. People like to think of it as women's issues and a women's movement. No, this is a social movement.
In fact, there have been so many social movements that have come from the state, and in many senses, this movement does, it embodies that same sort of a spirit of social reform and having those difficult conversations, like you said. Having a difficult conversation is the harbinger of change.
No, absolutely. See, please notice that the three of us who are on this panel, all of us have grown up somewhere else. Okay, what is it that draws us to Kerala? What is it that makes us want to come and work in Kerala? This is the spirit.
Right.
There is something fantastic that we want to be part of. And, we consider it our home. So if there are things that, require housekeeping, let us do it. That's the spirit we're here with.
Thank you so much, Anjali, for that. And we move to our next panelist. Our next panelist had to cancel actually because she's a teacher and today is Teachers' Day. So let's wish all the teachers in the audience a very happy Teachers' Day. But nevertheless, I want to introduce her, and Menaka, Executive Director of IFA, has kindly offered to read out her response, which she mailed to us. So Dr. Asha Joseph is a filmmaker, academic dean, and practice-based researcher who collaborates with artists from all areas of visual art. One of her students is Geo Baby, who got suspended from college for quoting controversy in his student film. And he went on to direct a film that many of us know, The Great Indian Kitchen and Kadal, The Code, both very gender progressive films. At the time of the college controversy, Asha had stood by Geo Baby, who is now producing her debut feature with students involved as crew. So you see some of the images over here. And my question that I had mailed to Asha was whether progressive gender ideology and practice begins actually in film institutes.
Yeah, thanks, Miriam. And I'm sharing on behalf of Dr. Asha Joseph. Asha shares. I believe progressive gender ideology and practice needs to begin at the beginning. From the moment when a human being starts to breathe, the treatment of every infant and child from a gender perspective matters. Non-formal, informal, and formal education systems need to be consistently and proactively challenged to bring in better understanding and action in society to develop progressive cultural practices. The performative aspect of gender has taken over our culture in such a deep manner. Our film industries have been under heavy criticism from female students and teachers in the past decades because of the serious inaction in various levels of gender inequality. At the periphery, just like any other curriculum, the film curriculum in various institutes have incorporated progressive ideas. But the implementation is extremely poor on everyday basis. Asha says, I am part of a gender audit team that visits various educational institutions. At the structural level, I would say the work has only started. I see this as a regular work in policy, plan, implementation, in syllabus, curriculum, and other areas of pedagogy. I have seen on intersectional terms, one has to be ready to implement the ideas, be it non-conformist or controversial. The first feature film that I directed was to support the above vision. My students, colleagues, and I did practice-based research to develop a content looking into gender understanding of young people. And this film speaks about the observations we got during the research process.
Very interesting. Yeah. I would love to call upon even Beena to comment with your work with Chalachitra Academy as well as Film Institute, as that being the basis for gender conversations and what we want to see finally in the industry.
It's quite interesting because I'm also involved in another project called A Room of Our Own, which I'm doing with Reena Mohan and Surabhi Sharma, where we are looking at this notion of a gendered campus and how women find their own voices within this. This sort of somewhere is so overlapping with what's happening in WCC, because one does realize that at a very, very basic level, when cinema is taught to women, there is no expectation of this understanding of a female voice, a gendered experience, which is there. We're not saying that we're not professional, we're not saying, but there is a voice that belongs from our experiences, from our backgrounds, etc., that comes to us, which needs to be explored. So what we found is there are no teachers, there are no female teachers, very few female role models, very few films directed by filmmakers, female filmmakers are screened. So what happens is you get into this whole thing, and a lot of women talk about how they try to be men, or you try to be sort of neutered completely in a sense in your filmmaking. I'm talking about filmmaking work. Yeah, so I think I completely agree that, and therefore both, in my work as a curator, I was very conscious. I think all the years that I did the film festival, you would always find that there were sections devoted to women. And, we did things like make sure there were dormitories available for women to come and stay. So that it needs that push. Somehow in today's society, unless you give it that push, it doesn't seem to happen. Though I must say, very interestingly, if you go to the Calcutta Film Festival, you go to Nandan, lots and lots of women come. So there's a kind of dichotomy in Kerala, which is again the same thing that Anjali spoke about, that you don't really understand why all this happens. I mean, sociologically, but it needed this push. And I think one of the important things the HEMA committee report says is the need for women at policy level decision making, that it does make a difference, when you have more women taking decisions, or at least part of the decision making process.
Yeah, for instance, when I'd spoken to Fauzia as well, she had said that for a department like cinematography especially, they asked her a question on the FTII panel that, but what will you do with cinematography? You'll probably only get married. You're not going to use that, So
my God, every single woman in the FTI interview or over the years, I don't know if it's come down now, but so many told us that this was the question they were asked. Tum to shadi karke chale jaoge, why are you taking a man's seat? So this is the attitude that one is sort of facing, really. Maybe it's changed, I don't know now.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Sajita, Dr. Sajita Madathil. She also is unable to be with us here today because she had a shoot that clashed. But I will introduce her, and Menika, again, Executive Director of IFA, has kindly agreed to read out her response, which she mailed us. So Dr. Sajita Madathil is an acclaimed film and theatre actress, writer and producer who won the State Award for her role in Shutter. She's acted in 40+ films and written screenplays as well as books. She has also worked as an academician, office bearer at the Sangeet Natak Academy and Chalachitra Academy. My question to Sajida was, WCC has been acknowledging the contributions of women over the years, whether through the PK Rosie Film Society, that was named after the first woman actor in Malayalam cinema at a time that it was taboo for a woman to even act in films, or Fatima Begum Research Center, named after the first Indian woman director-producer. So where do you place the formation of Women in Cinema Collective in Kerala's performative history? Because it is a milestone in a sense.
Sajita shares, let's start with a little history. The WCC has been a game changer in Kerala's performative history, breaking barriers and creating a more inclusive space for women in the film industry. We look back at historical documents from the earlier 20th century, it's clear that female artists faced intense hostility in public life. Malayalam cinema kicked off in 1928 with the film Vigatha Kumaran, which starred P.K. Rosie, a native artist and theatre actress. At that time, men usually played female roles in theatre, so Rosie's courage was revolutionary. Unfortunately, she had to flee her village due to violent locals and was forgotten by history until she was rediscovered in the 1980s. M.K. Kamalam, who acted in the first talkie, also remained in obscurity for a long time. While some actresses and singers did gain media attention, the film industry was seen as a risky place for women. Until 2000, the number of women in technical fields was very low. In this male-dominated industry, the WCC emerged, challenging the deep-seated misogyny. It was a historical inevitability. WCC is honoring the past while paving the way for future generations, redefining the narrative and ensuring women's voices are heard loud and clear.
Thank you. In fact, WCC, started its account by getting the historical ruling that an internal complaints committee is mandatory on every film set as per POSH guidelines in Kerala. So Sajita is on the monitoring committee, and my question to her was, can you share a little bit about this role?
Yeah, so Sajita shares about her role in the monitoring committee. Now, let me share a bit about my role in the monitoring committee. I'm very proud to be part of this team working to ensure that POSH, Prevention of Sexual Harassment guidelines, are implemented on every film set. After years of legal battles, WCC managed to secure an order to implement POSH on film sets. While the initiative of the Women's Commission, a monitoring committee was formed to ensure proper implementation. This committee includes organizations within the Malayalam film industry, including WCC. However, there's still a big question about whether these committees are functioning correctly and whether members' names provided at registration are communicated to the relevant parties. Some harassment issues have occurred even after the implementation of the POSH Act, leading to direct police complaints. This shows that members are not informed about internal committee, the IC, even though everything appears to be clear on paper.
Thank you for that. I now move to the next part of my presentation, which is the actress assault case. One must remember why this collective WCC was formed in 2017. The heinous assault of a popular actress who has since then been fighting for justice. The case grabbed headlines because a high-profile actress was assaulted in a moving car and the entire act recorded by the perpetrators. After the first arrests were made and the cinema industry in Kerala turned up in solidarity, the police suggested a bigger conspiracy and the involvement of a superstar who is one of the accused. The power dynamics became apparent as WCC stood firmly with the survivor to confront the larger gender battle it entailed. It is important to note at this point that the Women in Cinema Collective was formed a little before even the Me Too movement in the West became a buzzword. This incident triggered an unusual coalition of women who were determined to stand by their colleague to reframe gender as an urgent agenda in cinema. And we are now seeing how this plays out. So today we have with us our next panelist, Danya Rajendran, co-founder and editor-in-chief of the News Minute. She was one of the first to realize the significance of WCC and to consistently cover the case despite gag orders. So my question to Danya is, this sensational case must have been really a challenge to cover. One would think that with the, the profile of both parties and how high profile they are, that it would actually result in a sort of a speedy trial and things have to happen much faster. But in fact, there have been so many twists and turns. So I'd like to know from you, Danya, as you've been like literally doing it blow by blow, how do you see the role of WCC in first getting this case registered? And secondly, keeping the important issues always in focus. There have been so many sort of diversions and different accounts. So I'd like to hear from you.
First, thank you for having me, and congratulations, Miriam, for the national award. I was happy to actually call and inform you while you were like, what award is this? About the case itself, well, the case was registered because there was a complaint. The role that WCC played was to keep attention on this and to drive the point that the industry cannot basically split into we stand with him and we stand with her sort of a dialogue. That's not acceptable till the case is over. You have to only stand with her and not choose to be, keep your legs on either boards. Now, about covering the case itself, see, covering sexual assault in India is itself tricky because most of the cases are in camera, which means that it's a trial between the judge, between the magistrate, and the prosecution and the defense. The media is not supposed to cover it. So we hardly actually cover trials. But what happened in this particular case is that the trial itself did not start for a long time. And there were multiple twists and turns where the eighth accused in the case, which is Superstar Dilip, went to court multiple times. In fact, I was looking at the list recently, and I think he has filed almost 40 to 60 petitions in various courts asking for different things, from the footage of the assault to quashing of the FIR. Different petitions over the years have been filed, and the trial kept getting delayed. Eventually, when the trial started, there was a lull for some time. Nobody was covering it because we are not supposed to cover trial. Then again, there was a burst of coverage because people realized that a few from the film industry who had initially given statements to the police had sort of gone back on their statements or said different things to court, which is when I think the media sort of broke away from normal practices of not covering a trial, and everyone started reporting upon these individuals who turned hostile according to the prosecution. Then followed the gag orders. There were gag orders against the media. There were also gag orders against many members of the WCC, because they had also put up posts at that time supporting the survivor in the case and saying that all these people turning hostile is something to be questioned. So despite the gag orders, people have gone on covering the case. Then after that, there was again a lull for a few months. Then came a whistleblower in the case, which is a man named Balachandra Kumar. More coverage. Balachandra Kumar makes more revelations. There is a new FIR filed in the case. There are raids by the police. So again, one more chain of coverage starts. So this has been a case unlike any other which I have covered, where there are spurts of coverages, right? Something happened. And it's not just the News Minute. Everybody has been covering all these spurts of news. But also it has been mingled with a lot of opinion, which also has confused the people of Kerala, I believe. And one thing to be noted here is that right from the beginning, the survivor asked for a woman judge. And eventually that sort of turned against her, where she had to go to court twice saying that please change this judge. That was something which I have not seen ever in my career. But we have not been able to report a lot of things, Miriam, only because the trial is going on. And once the trial is over, we'll have to still look at what the law allows us to report, because there are a lot of things that you still cannot report.
But what is the, as a follow-up question, Dhanya, like you are getting your cues from what is happening in real time, but where were you also getting your cues from WCC in some sense to kind of keep the lensing and the perspective of this case? For instance, I did read some shocking reports when, like, the footage is supposed to have been leaked and things like that. There were all of those concerns as well.
So one thing that I've noticed about WCC over the years is that sometimes I don't know how they do it. And personally, I'm very shocked. There'll be a lot of pressure on them to react to things, right? People are continuously asking, where is the WCC? Why are they not talking? I myself have called people and said, why don't you react? Or why don't you say something? But they always have a very measured response to things. So even when they decide to talk about this case, for example, whether it's about the footage, whether it's about the witnesses, they've chosen the times to intervene. When Balachandra Kumar came out, that was the first time the survivor actually put out an Instagram post disclosing the fact that this is my identity, this is what happened, and I'm thankful to people who are supporting me, and I'm also shocked at what is happening. There was definitely a WCC intervention there, right? So they've chosen those times. Now, WCC as an organization could have just been on the rampage reacting to everything in the world. Like today, we can understand what kind of pressure they are in to react to just about everything on the internet, everything on the newspaper. But they've always chosen when to speak and when not to speak. Though there are some occasions where I would have questioned that. I feel that logic and that maturity has always helped because people know that they do intervene when it is needed. And in this case also, they have spoken up. In fact, the pressure that they put at the meeting of the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists, or AMMA, has been very crucial, right? It started dialogue that those people that you see on your television screen or your cinema screens as heroes, they're merely cardboard heroes at many points, that they're choosing to support him and her, and that narrative has to be questioned. And they've kept this pressure up, which has in turn also allowed people of Kerala to sort of sit back and think that, yes, what is happening is not correct. What is happening in the court, outside the court, is not correct.
So also this point that you mentioned, from when it was called the actress assault case to when the survivor chose to come out and reveal her identity, what kind of public perception did that one move happen? And we're seeing so much more of that happen with the HEMA committee report now out, and it's continuing to happen. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I think the public perception has largely been with the survivor itself. There was no doubt that the crime itself did not happen, right? The public perception was only divided as to who was behind the conspiracy, and it remains divided. And once the judgment comes, whether it's an acquittal or conviction of the accused number 8, Kerala society is going to be divided on what they believe the judgment is. Now, what many of us do not understand is that, now this is something the survivor has spoken, so I'm not actually giving out anything happening in the trial, which is not known yet. There is a narrative in the court that this was a consensual act, right? So for her, the first battle has been there to sit in the courtroom and to hear lawyers actually arguing that this was perhaps a consensual act. Now, these are layers which society is not perhaps aware of yet. They don't think that there is a doubt, that there is a debate in court as to the nature of the act itself. They've always supported the survivor. There's been no doubt in anybody's mind as to whether their support is for the survivor or not. The only doubt is who they believe the accused in the case is, right? But I think that once the trial is over and more details tumble out about what actually happened in court, there would be a much deeper realization of what this case actually was and how problematic it was. And for the survivor coming herself and declaring her identity on Instagram, I think it was also very pivotal because it showed that she could no longer not put her face or name out there. And it had become very important to do that. So I think people also had that realization that this was the time when she wanted to intervene and that they had to respect that.
Yeah. Thank you, Dhanya. And I will add that, I was following from the word go, and initially it was only the News Minute and I think Reporter TV who were kind of really focusing on the case in the light of the survivors. Later on, there were these tipping points where everyone started picking up on those cues. But really, I think looking objectively, y'all were the first ones who kind of put it in the light that it needed to be seen. So thank you for that. And I would like to bring in the other members of the WCC at this point. Anjali, we would like to hear from you how WCC lobbied for an internal complaints committee on every film set. It did not happen overnight. I was there, in fact, in Calicut when I saw you all come together and, have all these sort of many meetings that finally led up to it. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Frankly, we tried to lobby, but it didn't work. We went to every association and industry body saying that this is the law, this is what we require, can we please implement it? But we did not evoke any reaction, which was positive. So eventually we had to go file a public interest litigation where it was clarified. We were actually told, no, this doesn't happen in the film industry, or we are not a workplace, or we don't have employees, or we're an association, or, production units cannot be defined because we shoot all over the place, or at weird times, and all kinds of strange excuses. So the point of the PIL was to actually go to the court and get a clarification on the law. And it was quite a straightforward process where they called for reactions from everybody else who was part of the industry. They came forth and they put their perspective, which obviously the court did not entertain because this was the law, right? And then we got that clarification. But what was lovely is that we reached out to industry organizations which are outside of Kerala as well. And they reacted in a very positive way. So we had, references from the Producers Guild of India. We had references from the Screenwriters Association, from CINTA, which is the actor organization in Mumbai. In fact, Mumbai CINTA actually pleaded into the case.
Okay.
And that made a really big difference. And eventually we had, other agencies also pleading in, like the Kerala Women's Commission, the CCRA. With all of these, sort of people holding hands together for something like this, that did make a difference. But at the end of the day, it was just a clear interpretation of the law, which already said that every workspace requires to comply to POSH. POSH is the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, and it speaks about prohibition, prevention, and redressal. So in a sense, right from when you start work in a project, from that point till the film is released, you're actually covered, but it is not being implemented. So with the directive from the court, there has been a monitoring committee which has been set up by the industry with different representatives, and we actually always have the option to go back to court if, the implementation is not done the way it should be. Right now, they are in the process of getting more people on board. Slowly, ICs have started to be formed. I'm very, proud to say that there have been some consistent people in the industry who, since that point, have been consistently working with ICs. But still, the larger narrative of, even the most popular films, I would actually think that when, people come to promote their films, the media needs to start asking them, did you have an IC on this film? I mean, a simple question like that, are you POSH compliant? I mean, that will tell us about who are the real heroes of the industry. So I think that kind of intervention is required, and I'm sure it'll happen in good time.
Yeah, I came to your set and saw the IC over there, and I saw it on Revati's set as well when I came. So, well, there is definitely a start, and I guess, some things are also peer pressure and best practices that have that kind of a ripple effect. But congratulations on getting that landmark ruling itself. That itself is huge. I would like the other panelists also to comment. Beena, can you speak about the backlash actually to make this big thing happen? Because it looks like it happened easily, but we all know what kind of flack, what kind of resistance, and who were the few people who actually had the courage to come forward. There were many other silent supporters who were scared to even come forward because of their livelihood.
Miriam, it's a given. The moment women open their mouths, ask questions, the first thing is to train the gun on them, and rather than sort of think that maybe there is some sense in what they're saying. And that is exactly what happened with us. I mean, we were treated as troublemakers, we were treated as women who, were not professionals. There was a whole lot of stories. But I think the most, and of course, a lot of women lost work. Unfortunately, a lot of women were even wanted to disassociate themselves very understandably from the organization because of the fact that, your livelihood is at stake. And we found this with a lot of people, and, it was often disheartening, but it was also very understandable. But also, I think the other very frightening thing was the kind of cyber abuse that a lot of people were subject to. It was, it was so unpleasant at times. I mean, everybody knows of the discussions that happened. We know, and when it's online, it's also very difficult to pinpoint. Of course, there was pushback from the organizations, etc. They were at first very welcoming and then suddenly decided that we were troublemakers. But I think on the whole, uh, it was very threatening at some points in this journey. It was very threatening, but I think we knew we were fighting the good fight. It wasn't, it wasn't for personal gain. It wasn't for any personal revenge or anything like that. It was very much from the fact of our lived experiences, listening to women who came to us with their problems. And I think that's what has paid off in terms of, I don't know how far we'll go and how it's all going to unravel. But at the moment, certainly we do feel that it's a time when we are being heard.
Miriam, if I may just add that it's been a privilege to work with all of these women. It's been a real privilege because there's a lot of work that goes on, behind the scenes, and it requires us to really put our lives aside and gather the time and find conviction to be doing it every single time. And we're not a big group. We'd have very limited resources. It's just personal resources at the end of the day. We have no funding. We don't have any of that. But to find the commitment is something that, that has been consistent. That I think is the most special thing about this collective. That even if one or two people are feeling, okay, they may not be able to do as much today because they have work and everything else, somebody else will turn up to take up that load. That kind of easy exchange, that kind of flowing energy which is there among us, I think that is incredibly special. And I'm so inspired by that kind of spirit that has come up. It's very moving at many levels. And more than anything, please, it is important to acknowledge that. I think your study of this whole thing makes us revisit what we've been through. And there are many people, who may have come in for maybe not the right reasons, or they found it too much pressure, so they had to leave. All of that has happened. But big part of this team has literally just dug their heels in and stayed right there. That I think has been, that has been huge. To just hold hands when the wave is, really rough, and to just be there and watch it subside, that has been huge. And I hope it will see us through.
Thank you. And can we also have Revati in on this? The ripple effect of the HEMA committee report is apparent in Kerala with the dissolution of the Association of Malayalam Movie Artists, AMMA. But that, I think, is probably only the first step. I was following the social media accounts where you all are talking already about rethinking and rebuilding.
No, it's not the dissolution of AMMA, it is the dissolution of the board of the committee, that's all. Yeah.
Committee, yeah.
Yeah. So can we have, what is, something steps down and something has to replace it. So what does that look like to WCC?
Miriam, let me tell you one of the most common sayings, but we don't really, take it into ourselves. Change is the only constant, So when we have to change towards something, I always feel it is definitely you change for the better, especially in a structure like this, which is the film industry, which encompasses so many different, talents and people. Uh, when it is time to change, there will be a lot of objection to it. But one thing I have felt now, the attitude in the film industry, the issues that we're having in the film industry, or the kind of feudalism or the patriarchy, it's not a standalone industry. It is part of a society. So if a change is happening in the film industry, it will percolate into the society, into the larger society. And I think it is important because we're talking about a cause which is grave and which is much larger than just the film industry. Yeah, we are talking about it because, like Anjali said, this is the only state you can talk about. This is the only state that so many people have come together, and the government initiates a study like this. A study happens and it is released and we are talking about it. Where else has this happened? I think we should be really proud of this. So, Beena was talking about the cyber abuse. I just feel that all of us need to understand, nameless, faceless people can say whatever they want. But then in the end, it is towards a better change. And I think it is very important if all of us understand, even, the people who are in responsible positions, instead of putting the onus on the women, it's always, that, oh, WCC, the women, it's why should the onus be on us? What happened in the industry is not because of us. All these complaints are not because of us. It is because of certain people. So here, who is the, like they said, no, you are destroying the industry. Who is destroying the industry? This industry is not that simple. It's an identity of a Malayali internationally. Malayalam cinema, Malayalam music, Malayalam scripting, writing, everything. So it's not that easy to destroy anything.
In fact, our favorite word is we are rebuilding.
Exactly. So it is very important that we understand the essence of this movement. And when somebody, comments about it and, does this, whatever, cyber abusing or whatever, they should understand it's for all of us. It may not even happen in our times. It might happen in, maybe another 10 years, 15 years. So it's very important that we understand the foundation that this movement has started at.
That's the perfect note for me to move to the next chapter of the presentation today, which is expanding the scope, because WCC has really been expanding the scope of, what women should be doing in the industry. So even though safety became the rallying call, the work of WCC extended to every facet of filmmaking, from funding to inclusion and creating a level playing field. I'd like to show you the example of Mita Anthony, a makeup artist who fought for decades for accreditation in the film union, something that is a given to her male counterparts. And she finally won the battle. And when I spoke to her, she said she drew that sort of courage from WCC, that she can go ahead with this fight. She can go the legal route and win. So she finally got that accreditation. Then there is the cases of, during the peak of the pandemic, two young women, Tara Ramanujan and Mini IG, they directed their debut features with the support of a state fund that again WCC lobbied for with a letter to the Chief Minister to support the work of women filmmakers. So I would like each of the panelists at this point to comment on what WCC has managed to achieve. Really, all the work that you're doing is for the next generation in some sense. So can you tell us a little bit of that?
Well, I think there are 2 or 3 things that I would say, and everybody else will, of course, add to that. One is that for the first time ever, we had a conference of women from across the South Indian film industries. I mean, I'm just sort of jumping from one thing to the other, but I just talk about this. Yeah. We had this conference, which was just the most amazing 3 days we all spent together as women professionals. We had panel discussions, we talked to each other. And out of that, we came up with a report which we called Shift Focus, uh, which was a set of recommendations basically that came out of these discussions that we had on how to recommendations on improving the workspace, which we are also going to use now. So I think that was a very important moment. There was, there's also solidarity, there's also sisterhood. So a lot of the women today who are in the Telugu industry and in the Kannada industry who are making these demands were all present at this conference, and it was a very, very, very empowering moment for all of us, I think. Anjali's worked on a cinema policy with a group of people. I mean, there's so much work. We've fought the case. We've helped. I don't know how many people Revati and the rest of them have helped in terms of just counseling, complaints, just the daily struggle of listening to these women and hearing horrible stories, not knowing what to do about it. Sajita has worked a lot on the issues of union membership. So there's a whole range of things that people don't even hear of, know of. And it's always thought of as kind of troublemaking. But, we think of ourselves as a kind of advocacy group. And I don't know if Anjali and Revati want to talk more about these 5 years of hammering on.
I just want to add, I've been an actor for a very long time. I have, done a bit of reading, but, working on a document, in detail, meticulously, there's this group of young people who have been, mentored by Asha Joseph and Anjali and Beena. And the detailing with which they work, the enthusiasm, and any time of the day or night, they bring about something with such amazing clarity. I mean, I am shocked. That has never been my strength. I look at the document and I keep saying, how do they even word it? So that is the kind of commitment these kids have. And they're all young kids, just between the age of 20 and 28, So I think they've worked with so much of passion. Anjali, I'm sure you have worked with them, together with them. It's such an enthusiastic group of girls. And for what? So that we can make these policies, make these recommendations, to make our workspace better. That's all.
I'd like to say, Miriam, that there is a culture that we have. I think each of us have somewhere yearned for a culture where we hold hands. And at the bottom of all this, that is what it is. When we are sitting together to draft a document, like Rachiji was mentioning, we have these lovely young energies in the group, they're all raring to go and waiting to see how we can do this. And I'm so proud that within WCC, things are actually, I think we're quite well documented as an organization, for the kind of content we've curated, we've collected, we've formulated, presented. I think the quality of work is something there for everyone to see. And no more is there a difference of who is an academician and who is an actor, because, you know, if a poster needs to get made, get down and make it. There is no excuse of someone knowing something or not knowing something. No, everybody needs to get out there. Whoever is available, just get down and do it. That attitude is lovely. But this kind of culture where we respect one another and we try to, you know, really think about things and put them on paper so that they can contribute to greater change. I think that really inspires a lot of people. So we are lucky to have with us a whole new generation of people who want to contribute in those ways. So it's amazing how much research they will do, how they will call up, find out, speak to people, have the conversations, come back, you know, collate all of this and put it out there. Initially we were having to do everything ourselves, and now to have a team that backs you up, now, you know, that team which is backing us up is growing bigger and bigger, and that is beautiful. And frankly, for all of us in WCC, what has also happened is we've genuinely learned many more skills than we arrived here with. And even in our working field, and even our professional field, when we work with these women, or when anyone works with these women, I can tell you, they will find them performing at another level altogether. And that comes from the experience they have got from within WCC also. So it's been a very empowering experience at that stage. But more than anything, I must also say, you know, a lot of times, like they were saying earlier, there are moments where you just want to share a moment and have a laugh, you know, and that is something that we'd be discussing something insanely important, and then in the middle of that somebody will say something lighter and everybody will just crack up, and then we come back together with renewed energy. That is beautiful. I was telling someone today, there is, you know, a conversation. I remember somebody from WCC who is really out of work, very much so because she is no longer, you know, considered popular because she's part of the collective, and therefore it's difficult for her to get work. And instead, she was telling me how she's, you know, she's cultivating things. She's into agriculture and what we call kurka. She grows that. So she and I exchange recipes for kurka, you know. How do you make kurka in your house? You know, this kind of very light banter, which has nothing to do with the working of the collective, but it is one woman talking to another. And
In
that
fact, I'm just to like, because you spoke about the kurka and you told me about the kadhi, right? Y'all would meet to have like chaya and kadhi every evening or something, and just like, you know, exchange notes through the pandemic. I think that was almost a survival ritual that y'all had between yourselves.
that was the only meeting where there was no agenda, where we would not talk about the collective. You know, we'd just be bringing our personal selves and sharing what we felt. And it was a very intimate, beautiful spaces to have. And we're really, I think, very lucky to have them consistently and with us and have it growing. That's the amazing thing.
I think Beena.
Can I just add one thing? There is a lovely question that talks about how do you keep the organization structure horizontal and democratic and yet work so efficiently? How do you deal with internal differences? I love this question because this is something we have also wondered, and we felt, no, here we have to have everybody's equal. Everybody, whoever has the time works. Who doesn't have the time, we don't like complain about them, you know. So okay, who is there to pitch in? Okay, you're there, okay, fine, okay, four of us will put together. So everything is so organic in this organization, I mean in our collective, that it feels so beautiful.
Right.
And even though we have our differences, we sort it out without you know, there is no thing of hierarchy here. You know, there is, everybody is equal and everybody has the what do you say, the freedom to tell their opinion. So I think that's why this collective has, you know, works with such democracy.
I think Asha had also mailed in her response. Isn't that right, Menaka? Would you like to read that out as well to this question?
Yeah, I think Asha speaks about many things, but she talks about her hope that the knowledge that the present and future is feminist. Sorry, video. And she also says a hope that there can be a better prospect for women in cinema, and the fact that reclaiming women's contribution has been a central vision to the group. And yeah, so that is something that keeps them together. And I think a lot of audience members from your sharing can sense the spirit of the group. It's giving everybody hope, solidarity, and immense strength. And those are some of the comments that some of our audience members have left in the Zoom chat.
So I'm going to the last part of my presentation, which actually what WCC has done has been an inspiration for so many other collectives. And one of the other collectives that emerged is IWCC, which is the Indian Women Cinematographers Collectives, in an area like cinematography, heavily stereotyped as a male domain. The collective has over 100 members across India. So this is the kind of sort of ripple effect that we see, that, when you see collective efforts, then there are so many other. In fact, I'm part of a documentary collective now, and I think it is the era of collectives where you feel that strength from drawing from one another, sharing experiences, sharing resources.
I believe the IWCC was almost simultaneous to WCC. And
Yes.
hats off to them for the kind of content that they've created, over the pandemic and things. Fantastic content, which all of us have, found very inspiring.
Yeah. And Fauzia has been active both in WCC as well as a founding member of IWCC in that sense. So yeah, there are so many commonalities as well to draw from each other's strengths, resources, networks, all of that. So in conclusion, the strength of this research and documentation project is that it is a behind-the-scenes, in-depth account of a subject that has played out and continues to play out largely in the public domain with a host of well-known names and faces of Malayalam cinema. My research will culminate in the manuscript of a book that I believe will put forward a perspective that may begin with the legal case that got WCC started, but really goes far beyond into every area of cinema construction. The research and documentation gives space to stalwarts of cinema who are rarely heard because they work behind the scenes. They are respected names from screenplay writers, directors, producers, and technicians. Their opinions span every facet of cinema, and my research also includes the point of view of a humble makeup artist and a new generation of women filmmakers who are taking their cue from WCC to get their first breaks in cinema. So did this movement in cinema happen overnight? I spoke to people from beyond Kerala, film writer and curator Meenakshi Shedde, who curates for Berlinale and Toronto, and has more recently been on the jury of Golden Globes, puts in perspective the International Film Festival of Kerala as a theater of change and inclusivity, and also the role of WCC. So I'm going to read her quote. The film industry has been the most backward in terms of women's rights worldwide. Nothing to do with only India. So I think WCC is one of the few movements. I think the reason it has been able to do even what it has achieved is really because of the much larger, incredible forward nature of Kerala as a whole, as a society, as a politics, as a thinking race, education, and women's rights. I also spoke to Rashmi Lamba, who works closely with the Gina Davis Institute of Gender Studies, USA, and she was able to draw comparisons with the work WCC is pioneering and the path-breaking research studies on gender inclusion and cinema that earned Gina Davis and her institute a special award in Hollywood at the Academy Awards. So my final question to the panel of WCC is, you don't have an organizational structure, there is no hierarchy, and there were so many sort of things that went wrong. So what is it that keeps you together? You did share about the camaraderie and the sisterhood, the feeling of belonging, but anything else?
I think it is the really deep-seated yearning for things to get better. I think that really holds us together, because at the bottom of it, when things will change, that is when we can really heave a sigh of relief and, oh, we can't wait. frankly.
Absolutely. I think Anjali said it in the right words. It's just completely deep rooted in us. We really want to see that change. And like I always say, a creative film can be made only when it's a equal teamwork. So where you feel happy in the space that you're working, and that's when, it will be reflected on screen too. We need that back, that's very important.
In fact, wouldn't it be lovely if there was nothing for us to do?
Yes, then we can just have chai and curry all the time.
So yeah, we hope to get there.
And I think we're just having questions pour in, so I'm not even going to try to wrap up this session beyond saying that I am going to be taking this research one step forward to also see the sort of parallel movements and the ripple effect that WCC has created in the rest of the country. And also as far as Hollywood, where there have been parallel movements. So I will be going to the States on a Fulbright fellowship, and I hope that I can collate all of that together. I think it's not something that we see only that is Kerala specific, but cinema has that great power to, I think, really reach out far beyond sort of boundaries that we create. So I hope that will be out. And we will open the session by, I hope, Dr. Lalita Gopalan, who's going to be my host. She's the author of many books on cinema, who has been watching with interest what WCC has been doing there and kind of bringing that voice in the States in UT Austin, where she is a professor. So I'd love to open the session out for Q&A comments, and we could start with Dr. Lalita Gopalan.
Miriam,
Miriam, unfortunately, she had to leave for a prior meeting that she had scheduled, so she sends her apologies.
The time zone difference, it's some very odd hour over there in the US. So instead, let's have Rashmi Lamba to speak herself. I didn't read out her quote when she made the comparative analysis between the work of WCC and the Gina Davis Institute. If Rashmi is here, it would be lovely to open with her.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just being redirected. Thank you. This has just been so amazing. Start my video. Okay, sorry. Hi. This has just been so amazing. I'm such a fan of everyone here. And thank you to WCC for everything that you do. I think it's brave, it's courageous, and so needed across India. And yes, mentioning what you said about this being across the world, I was very inspired by the Gina Davis Institute when they said they had a documentary called This Changes Everything, which was exactly about the fact that, if we go and say, but, these are the problems, people say, nahi, but this is not the problem, hum kar to rahe hain, this is happening, we're making Pink and we're making Queen, etc. And then when the data comes out or research comes out, which is why I find what they do, I'm not promoting Gina Davis Institute, but I just find that the importance of the fact that it's backed up by a lot of facts, a lot of, and also solutions, as the WCC is doing. And I really hope we can take this across India, drawing from the inspiration of what everyone's trying to do together. And, your research that was done with Bina there and, very kindly shared a lot of what WCC had done. And I think that research was also very helpful. And we too took that across. This was the research that was done on reframing gender representation in Hindi cinema. And again, it was a 2-year research, which was sponsored by the US consulate. Again, the figures were just, really very, very, I would say, disheartening to a great extent, and a lot of common issues that were brought up. So I think if we can all come together somehow, I'd be very, very happy to, lend my time and what we can do together to make the change happen. We have to do that, just have to do that. And kudos to WCC for leading the way. And,
fact, even with the Hema Committee report, we are hearing how the Telugu industry now and Tamil industry, Bengal, Bollywood, they're all asking for similar committees, that it's high time that it happens. So I'm wondering if Danya wants to quickly comment on that.
Telugu has had a committee. It was formed just after WCC, but it was not like Hema committee. It was basically put together by the then Telangana government to go to workplaces and speak to people. Unlike the Hema committee, which had sort of a judicial commission's characteristics where people came to the committee. So that's what created the whole confusion, right? The way Hema committee functioned. They made people come, they had a questionnaire and people were giving their answers plus also their complaints. So it sort of had a judicial commission's characteristics. And finally, the Kerala government broke the news in the assembly that, hello, this is not a commission, this is a committee. It has no judicial powers. But in Telangana, it is not so. They have been to workplaces. They asked people what are their problems. So it is not focused as much on complaints and I've spoken to a lot of people who are there in the Telangana committee. They said it was not extensive at all as the Hema committee was. It is just the beginning. It's a small beginning, but once that report is out, there would be clarity on what are the kind of workspace problems that are there in Telangana. In Karnataka, the movement called FIRE, FIRE, they have also been there, I think, almost simultaneously after the Me Too movement started. This is because one Kannada star, her name is Shruti, she was one of the initial people who had come up with an allegation at that time. It became a huge controversy here. And that's when this sort of collective came together. This is both males and females in the industry. It's not a female only collective, but there are a lot of people in the collective. They met the chief minister of the state today, Siddaramaiah, and Siddaramaiah has said that he will hold a meeting soon. So that's another industry which is asked for for some sort of a study. But what I can say is that there is resistance in whatever industry we're talking about, whether it's Telugu, Kannada, or Malayalam. There is resistance from a group of people who control industry. And I think what we need to look very carefully now at is the unions of the industry, right? The unions are also run by the same people who run production houses, who are the big directors or actors, who own theaters, who also lock in the distribution system. So there's a clear conflict of interest as to who runs the union, who runs the industry. And that's the same across all the languages, which is why they resist any kind of study or committee like this.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Tanya. Menaka, there are many questions from the audience. I think we can dive into those.
I mean, there were a lot of questions actually, but I think all the panelists have answered them in some way through the conversation. But I'd like to ask one which very much addresses what the group was talking about before. Shashwati Talukdar addressing the panel says, if the panel, anyone from the panel can address the labor that women are called to perform when they do work for something like WCC, emotional, monetary, reputational, the list goes on. And where are the male allies?
Well, if you find them, please let us know. Yeah. See, there are many allies who reach out to us and speak to us, at an individual level and believe, we should go on and who urge us to go on. But every time I tell them, why don't you come out into the open and speak about it, there is a resistance to that. And it is simple. It is fear. It is, if not fear of being sort of subjugated, it is fear for one's image. It is fear for one's popularity. And when they see the kind of backlash that we face, who will be tempted to come and be part of that? It's quite natural, right? But now the huge support that comes, we are not asking about the gender of it. When support is coming in from the society and media, we are not the ones asking about which gender you belong to, because we shouldn't. And that, I think, is what we need. From within the industry, there are hardly, anyone that we can say that we really have that kind of support. We really can't. And I'm sure they have differences about the way we approach things, about the way we call out things. And it's all very uncomfortable for people who like stability. So naturally, we don't come in a very easily palatable form. And yeah, so that's so much to say for the male allies.
And about the labor that she's alluding to, that the I mean, which you've already spoken about a little bit, but yeah, I think just to acknowledge, I guess, that the labor that
Well,
goes into the movement.
I don't know, Chechi, if you want to talk about it. See, the funny thing is, when it's we don't see it as labor, frankly. That's the thing, because we really, all of us want to do what we're doing. But yes, there is a lot of work that goes in, and it eats into our lives. It eats into our time. It eats into, everything else. But that's because we allow it to. That's because we see it as priority. That's because of, when there are 100,000 emails to answer, the first one that we may go check might be one which is, on the WCC group. That's because it's assumed importance for us in our lives. And so we don't really see it as much as labor. Yes, we get tired, and yes, we get, we're overworked and all of that. But I think that's what it takes. But to see other people join in and be willing to shoulder that, that's very rewarding. And I think, yeah, that's our payoff, to see change and to see other people who come in and help us with it.
In fact, when I spoke to Miriam Joseph, one of the people who joined you late, she said why she was drawn to WCC. She was stuck during the floods, the Kerala floods, and she saw the remarkable way that you all had kind of banded together to kind of do relief work at that time. And even this time during the Wayanad thing, we had to postpone because Asha and Sajida, so many people were involved in those kind of relief efforts. So it seems like a very sort of organic sort of bonding.
It is, and it's also that we're constantly wanting to do more. Actually, we want to do so much more. But we're limited by, the hours we have in a day and the number of people we have and the time everyone has and the resources we have. But everybody, if you ask them, everybody wants to do so much more, full of ideas. And, it's a lot of excitement whenever something is asked, but hey, how are we going to do this? And so many things come forth, but to be able to do it is a different ball game, right? So yeah, so these are
I just want to add that our group has people from all age groups, and everybody is they've worked in different spaces with such meticulous detail that everybody's passionate about something or the other. And when they talk about their passion, that we need to do this, everybody pitches in. Nobody kind of, says no to anything, and if we have a question or a doubt about pitching in, we ask the questions. And if the answers are something that, convince us, then everybody just jumps into it. And we work towards that one particular, cause or one particular space or one particular issue that is going on. And the differences are always talked to, and we discuss. And sometimes the discussion is dramatic, but, all of us have drama in us, and it comes out at times. But, but all of us know that we're all in it together, and if there's anything, we will hold each other's hands.
That's lovely. I think a lot of the questions which you all have already addressed was about, how the HEMA committee report can influence the other film industries, which I think Danya addressed. So I'm not asking those questions. And you have all already mentioned that what you do is for the long haul. But I think a lot of people are asking different questions about, is it really going to make a difference? When do you see, it's going to make a difference in this male-dominated industry, Malayalam industry? But Annie Chandy Matthew also is asking, do you have specific changes that you would like to see? You've shared that, but if there's something you'd like to share, specific changes that you wish to see, that WCC or each of you wish to see.
Most definitely, we have very, very specific asks, and we're in the process of actually articulating all of that. And it requires a lot of thought because it requires study of how things happen in different places. And we don't really have too many precedents where change is introduced through sort of in a lateral space where, through a policy suddenly out of nowhere. We don't have too many precedents of that. And we're trying to study those. We're trying to understand, how we can think out of the box for solutions. So, and we're also speaking to a lot of people in the industry. Say, please understand, even with the HEMA committee, this study is from about 5 years ago. And over the last 7 years, I think the sort of awareness in the industry and outside about how the industry functions with reference to gender especially has changed. People have become conscious of it. And that in itself makes a big difference. There is, a part of our community, the filmmaking community, which is more aware than before and chooses to step aside and work in a way that is more egalitarian, that is more empowering to people. So there are those pockets of hope that is definitely there. Besides that, even in this particular system, see, we're a highly unionized, industry. So if you want to implement change, what's very interesting is very often all of these bodies very quickly in solidarity, they decide to make an announcement over the span of a day. In quick solidarity, they will decide to, conduct some kind of an event to support some kind of a disaster that has happened somewhere, to help resolve it, to raise funds. So when solidarity is possible in all of those spaces, surely solidarity can be possible in improving the industry as well. So when we would like to ask for changes, also, it is not going to be limited to only what is good for women. No, the thing is, when you improve things, it improves for everybody. Something as simple as they ask for toilets, we're obviously not going to ask for toilets only for women, if you know what I mean, So we're talking about an upgrade in the work culture. And that has to be sort of, how do we say, broken down into very implementable asks. And that is a big part of the job. So yes, that is something that I think all of the industry bodies need to get together and start doing. But more than anything, we need to understand that this ability to have solidarity needs to be mobilized towards good change. And that is what we are trying, hard for right now.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to share. So those were primarily a lot of questions about also representation of women in the industry, and there were questions about whether this gender imbalance or balance is also felt in the field because of the educational structures that exist. So Lena says, is the reduced number of women in the professional space of film related to reduced number in film education? And I know Bina has left, and Asha also may have been able to address that, or if any of you would like to share.
Chechi, would you be liking to say something about that?
Yes. So the imbalance will definitely change if there are more women who come to work. And that's exactly what we are looking at. Starting from film studies in the institutes, in the academy, in academia, where you have more women working on that. So you have more women on set, not just the actors, because otherwise women are only actors, whether it is junior artists or otherwise. And then you have women cleaning the vessels. I'm always, kind of connected with those women. And every time I felt, no, they're the only women in the technical aspect, where it's the cleaning vessels, which is done by the women, So it's just bringing more women in the film studies and bringing them as assistant directors, art directors, audiographers, editors in every aspect of filmmaking. So that is definitely changing. It is changing. And in Bombay, in a very large way. Now there's absolutely they're not bothered. Do you do good work? What are the kind of films and how is your work? That's the only thing they see. They don't even look at whether you're a gender kind of difference is not seen at all. Whether you're a boy or a girl, it makes no difference. If you're good at work, you get work. So that is how it has to be. The credibility of your work should speak for itself. not whether you're a man or a woman. It should come.
If I may add to that, because I mean, I've spoken extensively about this to Sajita, Asha, Didi, all of whom are academicians and work extensively with men and women in the field. There are a lot of students who come in who are women, and you know, the number of women who actually come out of these institutions cannot be compared to the number of women in the industry, because many of them come in and they work for 1 or 2 films and then they just sort of fall away. You know, there is a very high level of attrition in the industry. We don't have data on this, but we can only rely on personal anecdotes that we're aware of. And there are so many where people say, oh, I came in for 1 film or 2 films, and then, you know, that's it. I couldn't handle it anymore. So that's when we arrived at the thing that it's important to you know, not just, you know, teach more women what needs to be done in the industry, but also to change the working environment so that people who come can stay and can work here professionally, comfortably, safely. So that's where that thought comes from. But there are a lot of women very much interested, and I know about all of these women who are working, you know, so beautifully in the academic field, inspiring these young people to come ahead, and also trying to create a culture among the men of you know, being empowered. It's very important how the men are, right? And when they're working, they're not just working on one gender, they're working on everybody to try and create that environment, which is welcoming and keen to work together and see strengths in one another.
Thank you. I think we have overshot the time we had, but I have to say we've had a very engaged audience. And there are a lot of questions, as you can see. We're sorry we can't address all of them, but I know that our panelists have been very generous with their sharing and bringing their work and sharing it with us this evening, and have addressed a lot of these questions. And I'm sure there'll be more conversations to happen as is happening currently. Someone is asking Miriam, and I guess it's for everyone, is anyone envisioning a feature film on WCC?
I think their real life story is so exciting. I've been really listening to each of their journeys into cinema, which is each so different yet vivid and beautiful. They deserve like a series, not one story on will not do justice. It deserves a complete series. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. It's like really beautiful. I mean, each session I've asked for a second session just to, you know, hear the whole story and the whole, you know, each production of theirs, the challenges they faced and where they are today. It's incredible, frankly.
Starring for people like yourself and Danya, who are always reminding us of what we should be doing.
No, they totally
And
deserve
Danya will be there in every episode.
connecting thread, yes.
The connecting thread.
And on that note,
I would like to say a thank you to Danya.
Yes, thank you, Danya.
A huge strength to all of us through all our, you know, all the 7 years that we have existed.
I don't know what else to say.
Yes, many times when I needed contacts, the common thread was also Danya. Danya, how do I contact? I've spoken to 5 of them. I need to speak to these many more. So yes, thank you, Danya, and thank you, Revati. Thank you, Anjali. Thank you, Beena. And you know, I would love to end this session with playing a small work in progress where you just see women at work on cinema sets. Don't try to read it because it's just a work in progress. But part of our big challenge was just to get visuals, because these women are so involved in their work. They very rarely document themselves doing this important work. So these are behind the scenes glimpses. And you saw some of these stills in the presentation. But this is put together in a way that you're kind of walking behind a film set and meeting each of them at their work. And we can end on that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of India Foundation for the Arts, I want to thank all the panelists uh, and members of WCC, those who've joined us today, as well as those who've been, working with all of you for the tenacity, for the solidarity. And I think audience members have said it that the hope that it's an inspiration that has been giving them this very conversation. So thank you for joining us today. Miriam, thank you for, following this journey and sharing this story. And I know there's more to come. There's more work that you wish to do and a publication sharing this. And as the movement continues, you will, I'm sure, follow them. If you'd like to follow Miriam's journey, you can. It's on Instagram, Reframing Gender. That women also do follow Women in Cinema Collective as well. You can also follow India Foundation for the Arts at our social media handles to stay in touch with the work we do, the projects we support in arts and culture, as well as events such as these. So once again, I'd like to thank all of you and Dania as well for your very generous sharing and your very generous time that you spent with audience members and our lovely audience who've engaged with us as well. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Menaka. And thank you, IFA.
Thank you.